Homeless mom inherited mountain house, then her German shepherd uncovered a hidden secret. The rain came down in long, punishing sheets, the kind that erased the edges of things and made the whole world feel temporary. Behind the fluorescent glow of a roadside diner outside Fort Garland, Jenna Hart huddled beneath the metal overhang with her 10-year-old son, Eli. The concrete was cold, the kind of cold that crept through shoes and bones, and the smell of wet asphalt clung to the air. Hunter lay beside them, tense but quiet. The German shepherd's coat was soaked, yet he stayed pressed against Eli, as if warmth were something he could create by force of will. He lifted his head every few seconds, ears swiveling, reading the world the way he always did. Jenna had learned to trust that more than weather reports or people. Eli clutched the backpack they shared. "Mom, is the rain ever going to stop at will?" she said, though she didn't entirely believe it. She brushed wet strands of hair from her forehead, watching the puddles ripple under Hunter's paws. Nights like this made fear feel heavier. She had lost her job at the auto shop 3 months earlier, and the savings had vanished faster than pride. Now it was just the three of them, drifting from place to place, trying to stay ahead of the cold. A door slammed. Hunter shot upright, muscles coiled. Jenna followed his gaze. A county vehicle rolled slowly into the alley, tires crunching gravel. A woman in a soaked county jacket stepped out, clutching an envelope to her chest like it might break if she held it wrong. She scanned the shadows, bewildered, then called out. Jenna Hart. Jenna froze. Government workers didn't come looking for people like her. They looked for addresses, not corners behind diners. Eli shifted closer, and Hunter moved between them, tail stiff, ready to measure the stranger's intentions. "Who's asking?" Jenna said, her voice steady even as her pulse rose. The woman checked the envelope again. Jenna waited for the words no one wants to hear. A warrant, a debt notice, custody paperwork. Instead, the woman said, "County Probate Office. I've been trying to reach you for 3 months. Jenna felt her chest tighten. 3 months was the distance between now and when life had truly come apart. The woman stepped closer, but stopped when Hunter growled low. It wasn't a threat, just a warning. "I see you before you see us. I have a delivery for you," the woman said gently. "It's about your grandmother, Margaret Cole." The name hit Jenna like a stone dropped into deep water. A voice she had tried hard to forget. A porch that smelled of pine sap. A woman who loved in a way that never felt gentle. Margaret Cole had been both anchor and storm. Jenna took a shaky breath. She passed 2 winters ago. Silence stretched beneath the overhang. The rain softened, but the weight in Jenna's chest sharpened. The woman extended the envelope. "There's a property. You're the last living heir." Jenna almost laughed. A property. Margaret had lived in a sagging wooden cabin halfway up the Rockies, fighting off developers and time with the same stubborn will. Jenna had always believed her grandmother died owning nothing worth claiming. She reached for the envelope, fingers numb. "Thank you," she murmured, though the words felt foreign. The woman nodded and hurried back to the truck, grateful to escape Hunter's stare. Eli edged forward as the truck disappeared into the mist. "Mum, what does it say?" Jenna opened the envelope. Inside was a deed, yellowed and stamped. A small sketch map of a ridge she hadn't set eyes on since she was 17. And a handwritten note. Occupant rights valid. Beware structural weakness, outbuilding condemned, no taxes owed until reassessment. The language was cold, but something beneath it throbbed like a memory waking. Jenna whispered, "We're going back." Eli blinked. "To the mountains home," she said. The word felt strange in her mouth, like something borrowed or half-remembered. They gathered their things, which took less than a minute. A backpack, a sleeping bag, a coat that no longer knew warmth. Hunter shook the rain from his fur, then nudged Jenna's hand. He wanted movement. He always wanted movement when something was about to shift. They boarded the last bus north with coins scraped from every pocket they had ever owned. The vehicle rattled through plains that looked endless and unforgiving, then began its climb toward the foothills. Eli fell asleep against her side. Hunter sat at her feet, alert, eyes fixed on the smeared window as if he recognized the land even after years away. But it was Jenna who felt the old pull. Rocky ridges rose like silent witnesses on either side of the road. Every curve was familiar enough to bruise something in her. By dusk they stepped off the bus at a gravel turnout near a boarded-up gas station. The world smelled of cedar and cold mountain air. The road ahead sloped upward into a narrow corridor of trees. Hunter walked first, nose to the ground, reading the trail as if it had been waiting for him. Jenna followed with Eli's hand in hers. The forest thickened, swallowing the sound of the wind. When they reached the cabin clearing, Jenna stopped, breath caught between disbelief and dread. The house stood exactly as she remembered, and nothing like she remembered. The roof sagged like a wounded shoulder. Windows were missing. The porch had collapsed into a tangle of rotted boards. But the shape of it, the bones of it, were unmistakable. "Mom," Eli whispered, "it looks haunted." "It might be," Jenna said, "but it's still ours." They stepped inside. Dust floated through the fading light, and the cold wrapped around them like a warning. But it wasn't the cold that made Jenna's skin rise. It was the sense that something had been left unfinished here. Hunter trotted ahead, sniffing each corner, tail low, shoulders tight. He paused at the back door and let out a short, sharp bark. Not fear, not aggression, recognition. Jenna swallowed hard. Margaret had loved this dog breed, had always said shepherds saw truth before people did. Hunter looked back at her, eyes bright, ears forward, like he was asking if she was ready. Ready for what, she didn't know. Only that the mountains had never stopped watching her, and something here had waited a long time to be found. The first night in the cabin felt like trying to sleep inside a forgotten breath. The air was sharp, the kind that tasted like metal and old winters. Jenna and Eli gathered around the rusted wood stove while Hunter paced the living room, restless in a way she had never seen. His nails tapped the warped floorboards like a soft metronome of warning. Jenna coaxed a small fire to life, feeding it with broken chair legs and splintered porch rail. The warmth spread slowly, unevenly, leaving most of the house in shadow. Dust floated in the glow, turning every movement into a swirl of ghosts. Eli tugged his sleeping bag closer to the stove. "Is this really where Grandma lived?" Jenna looked around the dim room, a toppled lamp, a stack of newspapers from 5 years ago. A ceramic mug still half filled with what had once been tea. Everything felt too sudden, too abandoned. Margaret Cole did not strike Jenna as someone who left things mid-sentence. "It looks like she left in a hurry," Jenna said quietly. "Something happened here." Hunter stopped pacing. His body stiffened, ears pitched forward toward the broken window. A low rumble rose from his chest, a warning pulled from deep instinct. He moved to place himself between Eli and the doorway. Jenna felt the hairs on her arms lift. "What is it, Hunter?" The dog did not look at her. His gaze stayed pinned to the tree line beyond the porch. Snow dusted the ground outside, faint under the moonlight. Nothing moved. But Hunter saw something she didn't. He growled again, softer but sharper, then trotted toward the back of the house. Jenna followed with the flashlight. Every step felt like walking deeper into memory and danger at the same time. The hallway smelled of pine, dust, and something else she couldn't place, something metallic, like old tools left in the rain. Hunter reached the kitchen and stopped dead. He stared at the back door, shoulders tense, tail stiff. Jenna aimed the flashlight at the handle. Scratches marred the wood around it. Deep, frantic, recent. Jenna whispered, "Hunter, what happened here?" The dog pushed his nose to the floorboards and followed a trail Jenna couldn't see. She opened the back door slowly, letting the cold flood in. Outside, the world felt strangely hollow, silent in a way the mountains rarely were. Hunter stepped out first, sniffing the air with a seriousness that made Jenna's pulse hitch. He moved toward the old storage shed at the edge of the property, barely visible beneath layers of snow. The shed had always been there, even when she was a kid, but she had never gone inside. Margaret had forbidden it, calling it dangerous, unstable, not meant for curious eyes. Hunter approached it with the opposite conviction, as if danger was exactly what he expected. Eli hovered behind Jenna, rubbing his hands together for warmth. Why, as he digging, Mom Hunter had begun clawing at the earth near the shed door, pushing snow aside with powerful sweeps of his paws. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look back. Whatever he smelled was important. Jenna stepped closer, her breath clouding in the air. Beneath the snow, the ground had been disturbed, as if someone had recently dug there, as if someone had searched for something, or buried it. Hunter unearthed a piece of splintered wood, then nosed aside more snow until a patch of old, rusted hinge emerged. Part of the shed door had been pried away. Jenna's heart thudded. Someone had broken in. Hunter backed away from the shed, ears flat, head low, eyes locked on the dark seam between the boards. He emitted a bark that was short, sharp, and urgent. Not fear, not aggression. Warning. He circled to Jenna's side, nudging her back toward the cabin. Then he planted himself between her and the shed, posture rigid. Eli's voice trembled. "Mom, did someone come up here before us?" Jenna scanned the tree line. Every shadow looked too heavy. Every gust of wind sounded like footsteps. She swallowed. "I think so." Hunter gave one more bark, then ran ahead to the cabin door, urging them back inside. His body language was unmistakable. Whatever was near that shed wasn't meant to be faced in the dark. Inside, Jenna locked the door and pushed a stool against it. Hunter stayed there, sitting but not resting, watching, listening. Jenna tried to settle Eli back into his sleeping bag. The fire flickered, casting Hunter's shadow large across the wall. "Mom?" Eli whispered, leaning close. Why did Grandma leave like that? Jenna didn't know how to answer. She looked around the cabin, noting details she had missed earlier. A calendar still pinned on the wall, stuck on a month 2 years past. A jacket on a chair, pockets turned inside out. A flashlight without batteries. Margaret hadn't left. She had fled. Hunter let out a soft huff, almost a sigh, then rested his chin on his paws, eyes still fixed toward the back door. As Jenna lay beside Eli, listening to the wind press against the walls, she realized something simple and terrifying. Hunter wasn't confused by the new place. He wasn't anxious or overwhelmed. He recognized danger. He recognized trespass. And he recognized that something in these mountains had been disturbed long before they arrived, long before her grandmother disappeared from this house. And as Jenna drifted toward sleep, Hunter lifted his head, ears pricking at a faint sound beyond the trees. Not an animal, not wind, footsteps, quiet, careful. Someone was out there. The night had only begun. Morning came in a slow, grey wash across the ridge, the kind of light that didn't warm so much as reveal what the night tried to hide. Jenna woke to the sound of Hunter pacing near the front door. His nails clicked softly, shoulders tight, breath steady but alert. Eli stirred beside her in the sleeping bag, rubbing his eyes. Is he doing that again? Yeah, Jenna whispered, pulling on her jacket. Something out there has him on edge. Hunter moved the moment she opened the door. He trotted into the cold air, head low, reading the world in ways humans couldn't. Frost coated the clearing, crunching under Jenna's boots. She watched him trot toward the tree line, stopping at a cluster of brush where the ground dipped slightly. Eli followed with a stick, pretending it was a hiking staff. Hunter kept glancing back at him, as if making sure the boy stayed close enough to protect, but far enough from danger. Then Hunter froze. His posture sharpened into a perfect statue of focus. Without warning, he began to dig, flinging dirt and snow in quick, forceful strokes. Clumps flew behind him, scattering across Eli's boots. "What's he doing?" Eli asked. Jenna moved closer. Hunter's digging wasn't random. It had intention, like he recognized a scent buried beneath the earth. Hunter unearthed something metallic. He poured the soil away until a small, rusted plate emerged, no bigger than Jenna's palm. He lifted it gently with his mouth, then dropped it at her feet. The metal was cold even through her gloves. Stamped across the surface was a faded logo she didn't recognize at first. A mountain silhouette, a pickaxe, letters barely visible beneath rust. High Rock Energy. Jenna's breath caught. She hadn't heard that name since childhood. A mining company that once operated deep in the Rockies, all secrets and lawsuits and sudden closures. 30 years ago, there were rumors of illegal drilling, missing inspectors, stolen land rights. Then everything went quiet. Eliza Cole had hated them. Jenna remembered that clearly. Hated the trucks that rumbled past her house. Hated the way they carved scars into the mountainside. Hated the men who smirked at her complaints. Eli leaned over her shoulder. "What's that, coordinates?" Jenna murmured. Etched along the bottom were numbers, barely legible but unmistakably geographic coordinates. Whoever left this here didn't drop it by accident. Hunter nudged the plate again, as if urging her to look closer. She wiped another layer of dirt away. A deep scratch ran across the corner of the metal, like someone had tried to pry it off equipment or break it from a larger piece. The edges were too jagged to be weather-made. Someone ripped this off in a hurry. Jenna felt a cold prick of realization. Someone who didn't want it found. The forest around them felt too still. As Jenna slipped the object into her pocket, Hunter's ears shot up. He turned sharply towards the deeper woods, body taut. A sound drifted through the air. Not loud, not obvious, but real. Footsteps, slow, careful, and trying too hard to be quiet. Jenna grabbed Eli's shoulder. "Back to the house. Now." Hunter positioned himself between them and the trees, backing up while facing the sound. His hackles rose, but he didn't bark. This was a different kind of warning. A measured one. Hunter didn't want to give away their exact location unless he had to. They hurried inside. Jenna locked the door, then stepped to the cracked window and watched the tree line. No movement, no silhouette. Just the suggestion of someone slipping out of view. Mum, Eli whispered. Was someone out there? Jenna didn't answer. Her grandmother's warnings crawled back from the past. Margaret Cole had always said the mountain kept secrets because people forced it to. She had fought High Rock Energy, fought their drilling, fought their men, fought for land that wasn't supposed to hold anything but river rock and pine roots. But what if she was right? What if they found something worth hiding? Worth silencing a stubborn old woman for? Jenna pulled the metal plate from her pocket and stared at it. High Rock Energy had been gone for decades, but someone was still watching Margaret's land. Hunter walked up beside her and sat, eyes fixed on the same stretch of woods. His calm didn't ease her. It confirmed her fear. Hunter saw what she couldn't. That night, the wind scraped branches against the roof like fingernails. Jenna couldn't sleep. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like someone testing the walls. Eli slept beside her, unaware of the cold tension threading the house. Hunter lay in front of the door, wide awake, head lifted slightly. Listening. Waiting. Somewhere past midnight, Jenna heard it. A soft crunch outside. Snow compressing under weight. Not an animal. Too rhythmic for wildlife. Too slow to be harmless. Hunter rose silently. He stared at the door as if he could see through it. His muscles quivered with restraint. He wanted to protect, but he was also calculating. That's what set him apart. Hunter didn't waste movement. He chose his moments. Jenna held her breath. Whoever was outside knew they had arrived, knew they had found something, and wasn't ready for them to keep digging. The cabin walls felt thinner than paper. The cold pressed in. The silence sharpened. Hunter stepped closer to Jenna and placed one paw against her knee. A promise. Not fear. Not panic. Readiness. Jenna understood. Whatever her grandmother had uncovered, whatever had driven her from this house, whoever had followed her into the dark all those years ago, the same shadow was now watching Jenna. And Hunter was telling her the truth plainly. It hadn't gone away. The road into Dawson Ridge was quiet in the early morning, a thin stretch of asphalt cutting through pines still dripping from last night's snow. Jenna drove slowly, knuckles tight on the steering wheel, her breath fogging the windshield despite the heater straining against the cold. Eli sat bundled in the passenger seat, half awake. Hunter stood in the back, paws braced, eyes fixed on the windows like a scout surveying enemy lines. The metal plate rested inside Jenna's coat pocket. Even through fabric she felt its weight. Dawson Ridge looked as tired as she remembered. Weathered storefronts. A hardware shop that had been dying for 20 years. A diner that smelled exactly like it had when she was a child, back when Margaret still brought her down the mountain once a month for supplies and gossip. They parked in front of the library, an old brick building collapsing into itself. Hunter jumped out first, landed lightly, and immediately scanned the street. His stance was protective, chin high, tail still, eyes reading every face that glanced their way. Inside, the library was warmer than the cabin and smelled of old paper and lemon cleaner. Sam Walker, the librarian, looked up from a stack of books. He was older now, hair snow white, shoulders stooped. But his eyes sharpened the second he saw Jenna. Margaret's girl. He murmured, almost to himself. Haven't seen you since you were knee-high. Jenna managed a small smile. Lots happened since then. Sam nodded, studying her with something halfway between sympathy and dread. He noticed Hunter next, who stood at Jenna's hip like a soldier, watching the old man without blinking. Beautiful shepherd, Sam said softly. Loyal breed. Hunter's ears flicked forward at the sound of his voice, assessing, deciding. Jenna placed the metal plate on the desk. Sam reached for it but paused when Hunter stepped closer. Jenna touched Hunter's back, reassuring him. It's all right. He eased, but just barely. Sam examined the plate through his bifocals. High rock energy. Haven't heard that cursed name in years. I found it near the shed behind the cabin, Jenna said. Hunter dug it up. Sam frowned, turning the plate over in his hands. These coordinates. He leaned closer, brows tightening. This isn't one of their registered sites. They weren't supposed to drill anywhere near your grandmother's land. Supposed to, Jenna echoed quietly. Sam set the plate down, jaw tightening. You should talk to Roland. If anyone can tell you what this means, it's him. Dr. Anthony Roland lived a mile from town in a sagging cabin filled with old maps and geological surveys. When Jenna knocked, she heard shuffling, then the wary creak of a floorboard. The door opened just wide enough for a pair of cautious blue eyes to peer out. Roland's gaze drifted from Jenna to Hunter. The dog didn't move, didn't break eye contact. Something in Roland's expression shifted, like he was weighing what kind of people stood on his doorstep. "I'm not buying anything," he said. "I'm not selling anything," Jenna replied. "I just need answers." She held up the metal plate. That got his attention. He stepped aside, gesturing them in. His cabin was a clutter of rock samples, yellowed maps pinned to every wall, and notebooks stacked so high the piles leaned as if listening. Hunter walked in first, nose low, tail steady, checking, corners the way a trained dog might. Jenna wondered again where he had come from before she found him half-starved behind a gas station 2 years ago. Roland turned the plate over carefully. "These coordinates put the drill site right under the north ridge of your land. That area was off-limits, too unstable, too close to private property." Jenna felt her stomach tighten. So they drilled illegally. Not just illegally, Roland said, quietly and quickly. "Look here." He pointed to the surface of the plate where the logo had been scratched hard, almost angrily, as if someone had tried to remove it. Someone didn't want this traced back to High Rock. Jenna sat down slowly. Memory flickered like film reels behind her eyes. Margaret's voice, sharp and unyielding, telling her to stay away from men in neon vests, telling her the mountain wasn't what people thought, telling her there were things buried under stone that people would rather kill than acknowledge. She heard something she hadn't remembered in years, her grandmother's gravelly voice whispering as she tucked Jenna into bed. "There are things in the mountain they don't want you to know." Jenna swallowed hard. When did they stop drilling? Roland leaned back, sighing. 30 years ago. Everything shut down overnight. No explanation, no payouts, just gone. Some say the company found something they shouldn't have. Some say they were caught trespassing and covered it up before the state got involved. Hunter nudged Jenna's leg gently, sensing her rising tension. She placed a hand on his head. His fur was warm, grounding, steady. Sam Walker's voice echoed in her mind. "Your grandmother wasn't wrong. She was just early." Roland continued, unaware of the storm turning inside her. "I heard rumors. Inspectors disappearing, reports altered, property lines ignored. Your grandmother fought them harder than anyone else. She filed complaints, showed up at public meetings, claimed they were drilling beneath her land." Jenna stared. "And were they?" Roland tapped the plate once. "These coordinates say yes." Silence filled the cabin. Jenna felt something shift inside her, a small but undeniable click. Her grandmother hadn't been raving. She hadn't been paranoid. She had been fighting a battle alone while the town dismissed her as eccentric. Hunter moved toward the window and let out a low rumble. Roland stiffened. "That's not a house dog. He's reading something out there." Jenna stepped to Hunter's side, looking out. Nothing moved, but she felt it. That same heaviness from the night before. That feeling of eyes watching from just beyond sight. Roland lowered his voice. "If someone was drilling illegally and your grandmother tried to expose them, they wouldn't have let it go." Jenna gripped the plate. "So what happened to her?" Roland hesitated, then said the words she already feared. "Maybe she found something, and maybe someone made sure she stayed quiet." Hunter pressed against Jenna's thigh, protective, anchored, alert. As they stepped outside to leave, cold wind swept across the ridge. The trees swayed, whispering secrets the same way they had 30 years ago. Hunter stopped at the edge of the porch, staring into the woods, tail stiff, ears high. A deep growl vibrated through his chest. Not loud, not showy. A warning. Someone was out there. Not a stranger passing by. Someone waiting. Someone who didn't want old truths dragged into daylight. Jenna touched Hunter's shoulder. "What do you see?" He didn't blink, didn't flinch. His body spoke louder than any words. He saw danger. and he was ready for it. Snow fell lightly through the mid-afternoon sky as Jenna and Eli climbed the slope behind the cabin, following Hunter's relentless pace. He wasn't wandering. He wasn't curious. He was guiding, moving with a purpose that felt older than the mountain itself. Every few steps he glanced back at Jenna, as if urging her to trust him, to keep going even when the cold bit through her jacket. Eli hurried close behind her. "Where's he taking us? I don't know," Jenna answered, though a part of her did. If Margaret hid something, she would have hidden it where no one else would look. Somewhere she never told Jenna about. Somewhere that mattered. Hunter stopped suddenly at a break in the tree line. Snow clung to the edges of a stone structure, barely visible beneath vines and decades of neglect. Jenna blinked. She had lived here as a child. She knew every inch of the property, or so she thought. But this building, half buried in the slope, was a stranger. "Mom." Eli grabbed her sleeve. "You ever see that place before? Never," Jenna whispered. Hunter circled the structure once, nose to the ground, then planted himself at the warped wooden door, as if waiting for her to open it. Jenna hesitated. A red county seal clung crookedly to the stone. Condemned. Unsafe. Do not enter. But the seal was old, older than she remembered the house being abandoned. Hunter pawed the door, a sharp thud echoing through the stillness. His bark was low, urgent, insistent. "All right," Jenna murmured. "Step back." She pushed. The door resisted at first, then gave with a groaning crack, releasing a breath of stale, mineral-tinged air. The smell hit her immediately. Damp stone, rust, and something metallic beneath it all, like the scent of rain inside a cave. Her flashlight cut through dust-coated shadows. Eli whispered, "Whoa!" Jenna's heart pounded. This wasn't a shed, it was a vault. Stacks of wooden crates lined the walls, some sealed with metal bands, others scarred where someone had tried to pry them open. The air hummed with the weight of long-buried truth. Hunter padded inside, sniffing each crate, tail low but steady. He moved like he recognized danger by scent alone. Jenna crouched beside the nearest crate and brushed aside dust until faint lettering appeared. High Rock Energy, property of Off-Site Geological Unit. She froze. Roland was right. High Rock had drilled where they shouldn't have, where the state never approved, where Margaret had sworn they'd trespassed. "Mom, look." Eli pointed to a corner where a cluster of metal cylinders lay wrapped in canvas. Jenna unrolled one and felt the cold, smooth surface beneath her fingertips. A core sample, dense, heavy, perfectly preserved. Eli frowned. "Just rocks," numbered, and Jenna's voice came out thin. "These aren't just rocks. They're proof. Geological records, evidence of what's under our land, and of what they took." Eli blinked. "Stole from us from your great-grandmother." Jenna corrected softly. "From the mountain." She lifted a second core sample. Inside, fine layers of mineral shimmered beneath the cut surface, bands of pale blue and silver. Roland had shown her similar cores in his cabin, but these were cleaner, more deliberate, more valuable. She found a leather folder wedged between crates and opened it carefully. Dozens of handwritten notes, coordinates, survey reports, internal memos bearing the High Rock letterhead, and dates. The most recent one matched the year everything shut down. The handwriting was familiar. Jenna's throat tightened. "This is Margaret's." She flipped another page and found a line circled in red pencil. Illicit extraction confirmed. No state record of this location. Continuing will cause the ridge to falter. A warning. Jenna's pulse sharpened. Margaret wasn't only documenting High Rock's trespass. She'd discovered the drilling was dangerous, that it could destabilize the mountain, maybe even trigger a collapse. Eli studied her face. "Grandma knew what they were doing, didn't she?" "She did," Jenna whispered, and she tried to stop them. Hunter suddenly stiffened, his ears shot up, his body locked into a rigid line, muscles coiled. He growled, low and deep, a sound Jenna had never heard from him before. Eli froze. "What is that?" Hunter stepped in front of the doorway, blocking them entirely. Jenna turned off her flashlight. Instinct told her light would give them away. Outside, through the crack in the doorway, snow fell in lazy flakes, but the tree line was no longer still. A branch snapped, then another, too slow for an animal, too heavy for wind. Jenna whispered, "Someone's out there." Hunter moved silently to her side, pressing his shoulder against her leg as if anchoring her in place. His growl deepened. Protective. Warning. Ready. Eli clutched Jenna's sleeve, trembling. "Mom!" "It's okay," she whispered, though fear was rising fast enough to choke her. "We stay quiet. We stay low." Footsteps scraped across snow just beyond the door, not approaching. Waiting. Jenna's mind flashed back to Roland's cabin, Hunter growling at the woods. Someone watching from the darkness. Someone who didn't want the past dragged out. Hunter lifted his head, nostrils flaring. Then he did something Jenna had never seen him do. He nudged her backpack toward her with his nose and barked once, sharply. Eli whispered, "What's he saying? He wants us to move." Jenna breathed. "Now." Hunter stepped back and positioned himself behind them, pushing gently, guiding them deeper into the vault. Away from the door, away from the watcher outside. A shadow fell across the ground near the entrance. Slow, deliberate, human. Jenna's pulse thundered. She clutched the core sample folder tight against her chest and pulled Eli close, her heartbeat sinking with Hunter's rumbling growl. The truth was no longer hidden, and someone out there knew they had found it. The mountain road was narrow, the kind where silence felt heavier than the snow gathering on the branches above. Jenna walked fast, clutching Eli's hand and keeping the folder of high rock documents tight under her jacket. Hunter stayed at her side, rigid with tension. Every few steps he stopped, sniffed the air, then resumed with a low rumble in his chest. They were only halfway to the cabin when headlights flared behind them, slicing through the falling snow. Jenna froze. Hunter sprang in front of her, body angled, stance wide, ready. A black SUV rolled to a slow stop across the road, blocking their way forward. The engine hummed like something patient, something that didn't need to rush to be dangerous. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. Tall, dressed in an expensive winter coat, hair slicked back, face too smooth to fit this wilderness. He looked like he belonged in a boardroom, not on a frozen mountain road. He lifted his hands as if greeting friends. Jenna Hart, right? And this must be Eli. Cute kid. Jenna pulled her son behind her. "Who are you?" The man smiled like the question amused him. "Name's Derek Miles. I work with High Rock." Hunter erupted into a growl that shook the quiet apart. Derek's brows lifted. "Impressive dog. German Shepherd, right. Very loyal, very reactive." "Stay back," Jenna warned. "I plan to," Derek said calmly. "I'm not here to hurt anyone. I'm here to help you." He opened his coat slowly, pulling out a thick envelope. He tossed it onto the snow, letting it skid to Jenna's feet. Eli stared. "Mum." Jenna didn't touch it. "Speak plainly." Derek nodded as if he respected that. "Inside is a buyout offer. Enough money to keep you and your boy comfortable for life. Enough to rebuild this mountain twice over. Your grandma turned it down once. I'm hoping you won't make the same mistake." The chill that slid through Jenna had nothing to do with the winter air. Why Derek smiled. Because we want the land, because we're prepared to pay for it, and because we don't need any misunderstandings leaking into the public sphere. Hunter stepped closer to Derek, teeth bared. When Derek took a single step forward, Hunter lunged. Jenna shouted, grabbing Hunter's harness just in time. Her dog hit the snow, claws digging in, body coiled to strike again. Derek didn't flinch. "That animal doesn't scare me." "He should," Jenna said. For a moment, Derek's expression cracked. Just a flicker, like he wasn't used to being challenged. He clasped his hands behind his back, posture controlled again. "High Rock doesn't want to fight. We just want to keep things contained. If you stay quiet, you get the money. If you don't, well—" He glanced toward the trees. The implication was clear. People could vanish in mountains like these? Accidents happened. Ask yourself, Jenna, do you really want to drag your child through a legal battle you can't win? Jenna clenched her fists. You think money scares me into silence? I've been broke my entire life. Silence never saved me. Derek tilted his head, studying her. Your grandmother said the same thing. The words sliced through her. Jenna's breath caught. What Derek's voice softened, almost sympathetically. Years ago, we offered Margaret a settlement, bigger than this one. All she had to do was sign over the land. She refused. Said the truth mattered more. He shrugged. A week later, she had an accident. The road up there gets icy, you know. Jenna's stomach twisted. You killed her. I didn't say that. Derek replied calmly. I said mountain roads can be unpredictable. People slip, cars roll, the cold hides a lot. Hunter snarled so hard, Jenna felt it vibrate through her legs. Derek continued. We don't want something similar happening here. You can walk away right now. Take the money. Start fresh. No one has to know about the little discovery behind your cabin. Jenna looked at the envelope, then at Eli, then at Hunter, who stood like a warrior ready to take a bullet for her. She saw Margaret in her mind. Stubborn chin, fierce eyes. A woman the town mocked as paranoid. A woman who died alone because she refused to sell her integrity. Jenna lifted her gaze and met Derek's eyes with a steadiness that surprised even her. No. Derek blinked. Excuse me. No, Jenna said louder. I'm not taking your money. I'm not surrendering the land. And I'm not burying what she died trying to prove. Derek's face hardened. You don't know what you're starting. Hunter moved in front of her again, stance solid, chest rising like a storm. Jenna placed her hand on Hunter's back. Actually, I think I do. And I'm not alone. For the first time, Derek looked genuinely uncertain. His jaw tightened. His eyes flicked toward the woods again, as if expecting someone to appear. This isn't over, he said. It was both a promise and a warning. He walked back to his SUV and slammed the door. Tires spun through slush. The vehicle fishtailed, then vanished down the road. Silence settled. Jenna exhaled shakily, knees threatening to buckle. Eli grabbed her hand tight. Mom, he admitted it. Grandma didn't die by accident. Hunter nudged Jenna's hip gently, grounding her, as if reminding her he was there, unbroken and unafraid. Jenna knelt and touched her forehead to Hunter's. We fight this, she whispered. For her. For us. Hunter licked her cheek once, decisive, like a soldier accepting an order. And Jenna understood something with sudden clarity. This wasn't about money. It was about justice that had been buried in the mountain for decades. And now, finally, it had teeth. The wind hissed through the pines like the mountain was whispering warnings. But Jenna didn't turn back. Not anymore. Not after Derek Miles revealed what High Rock had done to Margaret. With every step toward town, she felt her grandmother walking with her. And Hunter, ever vigilant, padded beside her like a silent oath. Kate Ramirez's office sat behind a tiny hardware store on Main Street. The lights inside flickered, but her voice was steady when Jenna told her everything. The shed, the core samples, Derek's threats, Margaret's so-called accident. When Jenna finished, Kate's jaw flexed. She removed her glasses slowly, almost ceremonially. I lost to High Rock 8 years ago. They buried evidence, bought witnesses, and made me look incompetent. But I always suspected they stole minerals from off-lease land. What you found proves it. Jenna wasn't sure whether to feel relieved or terrified. Can you help me? Kate's answer came without hesitation. Yes, and this time, I won't be fighting alone. Hunter nudged Kate's arm with his nose as if approving the alliance. Kate chuckled. Smart dog. And fearless too, from what you told me. Fearless didn't begin to cover it. The next days unfolded like a storm, tightening its spiral. Kate interviewed Dr. Rowland, who confirmed the geological anomalies in the core samples. She catalogued the coordinates etched into the metal piece Hunter had dug up. She called Sam Walker from the library for meeting minutes from 30 years ago. She even tracked down a retired county inspector who remembered Margaret's complaints, but admitted the county was pressured to stay quiet. Hunter stayed close through it all, often placing his paw on Jenna's lap when her energy flagged, or circling the perimeter of Kate's small office whenever the conversation grew heavy. On the third morning, Kate arrived at the cabin just after sunrise. Her coat was dusted with frost, her expression sharp. High Rock knows something's happening. They filed a motion accusing you of trespassing on their historic claim. Trespassing? Jenna repeated, stunned. On my own land, that's the point. Kate muttered. They're trying to shift the narrative. But the mountain didn't care about narratives. It cared about truth. Hunter barked from the yard, sharp and alert. He began pacing toward the tree line, nose low, tail rigid. Something's wrong, Jenna whispered. Hunter stopped at a patch of ground where the snow had sunk just slightly, as though the earth breathed shallowly beneath it. He began digging with frantic precision. Snow flew in a blur of white. Kate crouched beside Jenna, watching the dog like he was unveiling a secret held too long. Seconds later, Hunter hit wood. Jenna gasped. He backed up, paws muddy, revealing a timbered hatch buried, beneath months of snow and debris. Kate swallowed. That's not natural. Jenna knelt and brushed the wood clean. A rusted handle glinted beneath her palm. Hunter whined, pacing around them, urging them to look deeper. They pried the hatch open. Cold air breathed out from below, carrying the metallic smell of stone, oil, and stale fear. A hidden underground shaft. Kate stared wide-eyed. This is where they drilled. Off record, off lease. This is the smoking gun. They climbed down with flashlights, Hunter leading the descent as though he'd walked this path in another life. The tunnel stretched deep under Jenna's property. Abandoned mining tools lay scattered. Metal crates sat collapsed in corners. The walls bore drill marks. Kate's breath hitched. They stole resources from this mountain for decades. Jenna found a faded binder on the ground. She opened it with trembling hands. Inside were records bearing High Rock's logo, unauthorized extraction logs, names, dates, payment routes. Enough evidence to bury the company. She closed her eyes. Margaret had been right about everything. Back above ground, the mountain felt different, less haunted, more awake. But the fight was only beginning. High Rock retaliated the next day with a smear campaign that spread like wildfire across the county. Online posts claimed Jenna fabricated evidence for a payout. Local papers printed thinly veiled insinuations about her unstable upbringing. A few old neighbors whispered that Hunter was dangerous, echoing Derek's words. Jenna felt the sting of every accusation. Eli heard some of it at the gas station and came home with red eyes. Is this because we told the truth, Mum? Are they trying to make everyone hate us? Jenna knelt and pulled him into her arms. People fear what threatens their comfort, baby. But we're not backing down. Hunter lifted his head and pressed it gently to Eli's shoulder. The boy hugged him back, burying his face into the dog's thick fur. Kate didn't back down either. She assembled a legal arsenal, pulling sworn statements from Roland, Sam, the retired inspector, even a former High Rock truck driver who admitted he'd delivered off-books crates to Margaret's Ridge years ago. Piece by piece, the truth became impossible to ignore. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Kate stormed into the cabin carrying a thick envelope. Her face flickered between triumph and exhaustion. "They blinked," she said. Jenna's breath froze. "What does that mean? High Rock is offering a settlement, a massive one. But the real victory..." Kate tapped the document. "They're surrendering all mineral rights on your land, forever. And they're lifting confidentiality. You'll be free to speak publicly about what Margaret found." Jenna stared, stunned. "They're giving up the claim." "All of it," Kate confirmed. "They want this buried before the courts drag their executives through the mud." Eli looked between them. "So, we won." Jenna looked at Hunter first. He gazed back calmly, as if saying he had known all along. She turned to Kate. "I'll sign. Not because they scared me, because my voice stays mine, and Grandma's story finally becomes the truth everyone hears." Kate smiled. "Then let's end this where it should have ended 30 years ago." Hunter lay his head on Jenna's lap as she signed, as if sealing the decision with his quiet strength. Outside, the wind swept through the pines in a slow, deep breath. For the first time since stepping back onto the mountain, Jenna felt something like justice forming a heartbeat beneath her feet. And Hunter, the dog who had once wandered into her life from the side of a highway, was now the guardian who helped carry her all the way to the truth. Winter loosened its grip slowly, as if the mountain wasn't yet convinced Jenna and Eli had earned a softer season. But when the thaw finally came, it came with a gentleness Jenna had not felt in years. Snow melted from the roof of the old cabin in thin streams. Sunlight slid through the pines like warm breath, and the silence, once heavy and suspicious, now settled around them like a blanket instead of a warning. Jenna stood in front of the house one early morning, sleeves rolled up, a hammer hanging from her belt. The cabin looked different now, stronger. Windows newly repaired, roof patched, smoke curling from the chimney instead of cold seeping through the boards. Hunter trotted beside her, inspecting every nail, every plank, as if he had personally hired himself as foreman of the reconstruction. She laughed quietly. "You're the only supervisor I've ever had who refuses to take breaks." Hunter nudged her hip, tail moving in a slow wave, proud and territorial. As if to say he'd rebuilt something too, not just the house, but everything that lived around it. Inside, Eli set his backpack by the door. "First day back at school," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Jenna adjusted his jacket collar and smiled. "You'll be fine. Nobody can outsmart you. And if they try, Hunter will intimidate them later." Hunter perked up at his name, ears high, head tilted with curiosity. "Mom, please don't send Hunter to school." Eli groaned. Jenna grinned. "No promises." The boy hugged her, then hugged Hunter harder. "I'll be back before dark, okay?" He whispered it into Hunter's fur like a secret. Hunter followed him halfway down the dirt path before Jenna called him back. He lingered, watching Eli disappear into the curve of the road, then returned to Jenna's side, serious and quiet. "He always came back." Hunter seemed to say, "Your job is to trust that." Later that week, the town council placed a small wooden sign outside the stone outbuilding behind Jenna's property. She stood with Sam Walker and Dr. Rowland as the cloth cover was lifted. Margaret Cole Mountain Preservation Site dedicated to the truth she tried to protect. Sam wiped her glasses with the edge of her coat. Took them long enough, she whispered. Dr. Rowland nodded, eyes shining behind his gruff expression. Your grandmother wasn't wrong. She was early. They opened the shed only for educational visits. School children came in small groups, guided by volunteers. The air inside still smelled of earth and old mining tools, but now it held something different. Respect. Memory. A story that finally had a heartbeat. Jenna watched from a distance as a few kids pointed at the drill marks on the wall, their teacher explaining how greed nearly ruined their mountain. In the corner, a photo of Margaret sat in a simple wooden frame, her stern eyes watching as though making sure nobody twisted the truth ever again. Hunter sat next to the sign like a sentry. Parents and kids rubbed his head as they passed. One boy called him the Mountain Guardian. Another whispered that he was braver than any human in the story. Hunter accepted the compliments with quiet dignity, though he seemed far more interested in tracking chipmunks under the snowbanks. Word spread in town. People who'd once doubted Jenna now waved when she passed. The grocery clerk told her she was proud of her. A rancher from the next ridge offered free lumber for future repairs. Even the sheriff, who had once been suspicious of her return, stopped by the cabin and left a bag of dog treats on the porch with a scribbled note. For the hero. Hunter had eaten the entire bag in 2 days. Still, peace was never just peace up here. The mountain held its own rhythm. One afternoon, as Jenna patched the railing on the porch, Hunter suddenly stiffened. He raised his head and stared toward the tree line. No growl, no bark, just a deep, focused stillness. Jenna froze. What is it you see something? Hunter took a single step forward, nose lifted. Then another. He wasn't afraid, just alert, listening to something she couldn't hear. The woods rustled faintly, though the wind had stilled. But after a long moment, Hunter relaxed. His tail lowered. He walked back to her calmly, brushing his shoulder against her leg. You're telling me it's nothing, she murmured. Or not nothing. Just nothing dangerous. Hunter blinked once, slow and certain. But Jenna knew better than to assume the mountain had gone quiet for good. Secrets didn't vanish. They waited. That night, she tucked Eli into bed. The boy mumbled happily about school and Hunter and a kid named Braden who wanted to trade sandwiches with him tomorrow. His voice faded into sleep, warm and gentle. Jenna stepped outside. The porch light hummed softly. Above her, the stars looked close enough to touch. Hunter settled at her feet, leaning against her with steady weight. We're safe for now, Jenna whispered. Hunter closed his eyes, but his ears twitched. For now. Behind the cabin, the woods exhaled. Branches creaked softly. Snow shifted. The mountain's silence felt less like a threat and more like a reminder. Peace wasn't the end of the story. It was the breath between chapters. Jenna rested, her hand on Hunter's head. The dog stayed still, eyes open, watching the dark with quiet loyalty. Whatever came next, he would meet it before she even heard it coming. And Jenna understood this truth without needing words. Hunter wasn't just a dog. He was the mountain's last line of warning. A year later, the mountain looked different. Or maybe Jenna finally knew how to look at it. The wind still carved its own path through the pines. Snow still gathered on the ridge like white armor. But the silence no longer felt like something swallowing the truth. It felt like protection, like the mountain itself was standing guard. Hunter trotted ahead on the trail, a little grayer around the muzzle, but still moving with the same purposeful stride he'd had the night he dug up the first clue. Eli followed beside him, taller now, a backpack slung over one shoulder. He'd grown into himself this past year, not by becoming less afraid, but by learning what courage sounded like in a quiet place. That courage had built something. Mountain Truth Center sat at the base of the ridge now, inside a converted ranger station that smelled faintly of cedar and warm dust. It wasn't fancy, nothing Jenna built ever tried to be, but people from across the county had begun to treat it like a compass. A place to come when they wanted to understand what the land kept hidden, or what men had tried to hide beneath it. Inside the main room, light poured through wide windows onto display tables holding geological cores, copies of old mining maps, and a timeline of High Rock's violations. Local schools scheduled weekly tours. College students doing research arrived with notebooks and thermoses, scribbling furiously as Dr. Rowland lectured about mineral veins. Sam Walker volunteered twice a week, cataloguing new testimonies and helping visitors understand why Margaret Cole had been dismissed and why she'd been right. Near the entrance hung a bronze plaque with Margaret's name engraved beneath a single sentence. She kept the truth alive when no one listened. Every time Jenna read it, something in her chest tightened and softened at once. She sometimes wondered what Margaret would think if she walked into this room now. Maybe she'd scold Jenna for not organizing the exhibits better. Maybe she'd stand silently in the doorway, pretending not to be proud. But the mountain had long memories, and this center felt like a bridge between all the parts of their family that hadn't been allowed to speak. Hunter padded slowly through the exhibits like he was checking the perimeter. Kids flocked to him immediately, hands outstretched, laughs echoing through the hall. He accepted each pat like an old officer being thanked for his service. One little girl whispered, "He's the hero my teacher talked about." Hunter blinked at her, steady and gentle. Eli leaned close to Jenna. "He doesn't even know he's famous. He knows just enough," Jenna said, smiling. Later that afternoon, Jenna stood before a small group of visitors, local reporters, a retired geologist, a class from the middle school. She rested her hands on the podium. Hunter lay beside her feet, chin on his paws, watching the room. Most stories like this start with a discovery. Jenna began. Ours didn't. It started with a warning my grandmother tried to give long before I understood it, and I might never have found the truth if someone else hadn't shown me how to look for it. She placed her hand on Hunter's head. He lifted his gaze, golden eyes steady on hers. He didn't just find evidence. He found the courage I lost, and once we followed his lead, everything else started to make sense. The room fell silent. Not the uneasy kind, but the kind that comes from people absorbing something real. Reporters took notes. Students leaned forward. Dr. Rowland crossed his arms with a small, approving nod. When the talk ended, a teenage boy approached timidly with a notebook. "Ms. Hart, how did you know you were doing the right thing?" Jenna took a moment before answering. "I didn't know. Not at first, I just knew silence didn't feel right anymore." And then she gestured to Hunter. He pointed me towards the rest. Hunter thumped his tail on the floor as if giving confirmation. Outside, as the last visitors trickled away, Jenna walked with Eli down the slope towards the cabin. Evening settled over the valley, soft and blue. The snow reflected the fading light like a quiet promise. Hunter moved ahead, nose twitching at the breeze, his silhouette framed by the lengthening shadows. "Mom," Eli said hesitantly, "do you think Grandma knew we'd end up here?" Jenna looked up at the ridge, where the stone outbuilding lay sealed and honored. "I think she hoped someone would listen someday. She just didn't know it would be us." Hunter glanced back at them, then trotted ahead again, following a path only he seemed to understand. The mountain had returned to a kind of peace, but Jenna sensed it wasn't done teaching them. Some places didn't give up their secrets in one story. They unlocked themselves slowly, one truth at a time. That was the legacy Margaret left behind. And now Hunter carried it forward with every step. The ribbon fluttered in the cold morning air, snapping softly like a flag claiming new territory. People crowded outside the newly built wing of the Mountain Truth Center, bundled in coats and scarves. Reporters adjusted microphones. Local kids tugged at their parents' sleeves. The town sheriff stood near the steps with a rare, respectful expression. And at the front of it all, Jenna Hart stood with Hunter at her side. The big shepherd was broader now, stronger, his coat thick and glossy after a year of mountain air and steady meals. He sat tall, head high, chest out, every inch a guardian. A few kids whispered his name like he was a legend walking on 4 paws instead of 2. He didn't seem bothered. He watched the tree line instead, as if the forest might speak at any second. Jenna knelt and rubbed the side of his neck. "You ready for this?" Hunter flicked his ears but didn't break his stare. Always watching, always knowing more than she did. Mayor Calderon stepped up to the mic. "Today we honor the courage of one family and one remarkable dog whose persistence uncovered wrongs buried for decades." The crowd clapped, cheers rising in the crisp air. Hunter didn't move, though his tail swept once across the ground, slow and dignified. After speeches and photos, a cluster of reporters moved toward Jenna. One of them, a man with silver hair and boots still dusty from the trail, lifted his recorder. "Miss Hart, one question. Why did you keep Hunter with you through everything? What made you trust him at times when most people would have turned back?" Jenna paused. She looked down at the shepherd who had followed her from homelessness to the center of a fight she never asked for, never wanted, but ultimately had to win. The dog who had sniffed out evidence, faced down threats, and stared into the dark for her long before she found the strength to stare with him. She rested her hand on Hunter's head, fingers sinking into his fur. "He didn't just uncover the secret," she said quietly. "He led me back to my life." The reporter lowered the recorder a little, surprised by how much the answer carried. Some of the crowd shifted, leaning in. Jenna turned toward the nearest camera. Her voice grew steady, warmer than the mountain sun that spilled across the valley. "What's your story with a loyal pet?" For a moment, everything stilled. The breeze, the murmurs, even the soft chatter of reporters. The question hung in the cold air like something sacred. Then applause rose again, rolling across the center grounds. Eli ran up and threw his arms around Hunter's neck. The shepherd accepted the hug, then stepped away and faced the forest again, posture straightening, nose lifting to the wind. His ears flicked forward. Jenna followed his gaze. Nothing moved, no threat, no danger. Only the endless stretch of evergreens and the whisper of branches brushing each other like an old secret being told again. But Hunter stood as if he felt something else out there. Not fear, not warning, possibility. Eli tugged Jenna's sleeve. "Is he okay?" Jenna smiled. "Yeah, he's just listening. He always hears things before we do." The crowd began dispersing, heading toward the center for the reception. Children asked if Hunter could join them for pictures. Volunteers offered him treats. The sheriff gave him a pat on the shoulder like he was saluting a fellow officer. But Hunter stayed focused on the timberline until, eventually, he turned back to Jenna and nudged her hand, ready to follow her wherever she went next. She looked down at him. Ready to go home, Hunter blinked once, as if saying yes. But he cast one last look toward the woods before turning fully toward the path that led to the cabin. The mountain breathed around them, quiet and patient. Some stories end, some stories rest, and some stories wait. Jenna walked with Hunter and Eli down the gravel path, sunlight breaking through the pines behind them. Their silhouettes stretched long and sure across the ground. Before entering the center for the celebration, Jenna looked briefly over her shoulder and whispered into the cold air, "Thank you, Grandma." A breeze rustled the branches in response. Hunter lifted his nose, catching it, honoring it, carrying it forward. And as the screen fades, Jenna's voice returns, soft and sure. If this story touched you, share your own. Support the channel, celebrate your loyal friends, and tell us, what's your story with a loyal pet?